Thanks, Karis. My name is Kate Van Tassel. I'm the Director of Special Projects. I have been helping get the Pro Housing Communities program off the ground over the past 4 months, along with my colleague, Karis Rasmussen, who's also on the line and helping manage our questions and chat and manage the program, of course, but also particularly today, helping move us through. So today I will, let me start by showing my screen. I will run through kind of a high-level overview of the Pro Housing Communities program, including a few changes or one change that's upcoming or proposed, and then do a walkthrough of the main templates for the information that's submitted. And then we'll go through we'll give a little bit of feedback of what some of the feedback that we've heard now that the program's been up and running for a couple months. And then we'll open it up for questions. So thank you all for joining today, as always. And so we will get started. Let's see. Okay. So just a quick, again, overview of our agenda. We'll talk about HCR just in general, kind of the reason why we are moving forward with Pro Housing, an intro to the program, and then some more details. So I would hope, I should say, that most of the people on the call know who we are, but just in case, we are the New York State Homes and Community Renewal. We're the state affordable housing agency. And our mission is to build, preserve, and protect affordable housing and increase homeownership throughout the state. We are actually a combination of a number of sub-agencies, all kind of mooshed together, all doing a different aspect of housing. We fund a lot of affordable housing, both homeownership and multifamily, as well as we do regulate, we provide grants, and then we regulate rent-stabilized housing. So this is a high-level map. This map is also on our website of our housing assets. These are a description of all the projects that we have funded throughout New York State. As you can see, it's pretty diverse. We cover through the entire state through all sorts of different types of programs. We do multifamily, single family, manufactured homes, public housing, senior housing, family housing. We probably have a program for almost everything. So with all that, we're doing all this money. We're spending $25 billion in the housing plan. We're 2 years in. Why are we here today to talk about even more pro housing? Well, as has been in the news for a good chunk of time, but even again more recently, we in New York State need every and all type of housing. And so that's starter homes for new adults, homes for growing families to expand into, and smaller homes for seniors to move into. We talk about it as a cycle. And I think, the idea is that for most of us, our housing needs change over the cycle as our lives cycle through different phases. And in a lot of places, we've only built housing historically to address potentially one phase in that in our lives. And so we want to be able to have that mix of housing types to address multiple needs. And that statewide housing shortage, even separate from that, it's nice to have different options throughout the cycles of your life, is that the housing shortage is impacting both renters and home buyers, and not just in New York City, where in fact prices are up significantly, but this is also true throughout the state. And these are upstate cities. The rents and the prices for homeownership are going up throughout the state. And so this is the reason the governor has been so focused on this, is that this is literally a threat to the future of the state. We've been creating on a fast clip over 1 million jobs. We want to create more jobs all the time throughout New York State. However, in that past same time, we've only built 400,000 new homes throughout the state. And so all those new jobs mean more people and more families and more options for people to work here. But if they can't find places to live, then that's going to start moving that line in the other direction. Sorry. Okay, so that is where the impetus for the Pro Housing Communities program has started. And the Pro Housing Communities program provides support to municipalities who are taking action to address the shortage. And so, I apologize. Yep. So as of today, the municipalities who complete the certification are eligible for a preference in specific scoring of a number of state discretionary grants. And so why should your community apply? Why should my community apply? again, one of the interesting things that we've been hearing from localities that have already taken this or actually executed a lot of these policies, not even plan to, is that they, through encouraging housing growth, they have a lot of, knock-on benefits, including having mixed generation populations, a younger age, average age in the neighborhoods. If you have more housing options, rent is more affordable, depending, and often can reduce commute times, and actually boost the tax base. And so we also want to boost creative ways to creatively address this housing shortage. There's multiple options throughout the state, whether it's a rural community or a transit community or a suburban community, different ways to, the way, New York City's been describing it, like every neighborhood grows a little bit, and that actually helps over the large scale. And New York is a ginormous state, helps the system overall. Okay. And so what are the application requirements? So there are 3 simple steps for a community to become certified. First, sending a letter of intent. And that helps us track over here on the HCR side, again, literally who's interested, and helps us start making that connection to set up the systems to submit the information that you need. And then that's the second requirement of the submission of that key background information. And so that includes a zoning map in a GIS readable format, ideally, and then the zoning code through analysis and the templates that we'll go through, as well as a summary of building permits for the past 5 years. And then there's two ways of options for the requirement. So either if your locality has been growing over the past, basically the past 3 years, and this is slightly different for downstate and upstate because the markets are different. But if you've already grown in the past 1 to 3 years, then as long as you document that for us and show us that information, then and submit the information above, then excuse me, then you would qualify to be a pro-housing community. Or for some places, they may not either, they may not have grown previously, but are interested or want to grow, or potentially they want to grow, but even if there's no market demand for it, they may want to grow, but if it hasn't happened, that's not, we don't want to penalize people for that. So the locality would then pass the pro-housing community resolution, and that is a statement of values saying that the locality is going to explore and encourage more specific policies, which again, the locality can choose which policy makes the most sense for them, but that they are declaring themselves a pro-housing community and will take ongoing steps so that hopefully in the future they will show that growth that we need. And then after that initial certification, so after that initial submission, the goal is to track the housing growth and permitting over time. And so municipalities who have been certified would submit their permits on an annual basis. And so what are the deadlines? So we're accepting them on a rolling basis. And then after the completion of the submissions, that includes all the material I just talked about, that we will provide a determination within 90 days. As I mentioned, we just started about 4 months. We just opened up the program about 4 months ago. So it has been taking us closer to the 90 days to kind of work through all the kinks. We are hoping that can get faster as we go on, as we've learned more and are getting more experience doing it. But we do, depending on the extent of the kind of the scale of the information submitted, we're going to leave that for 90 days at the moment. And then we're working with the agencies that are providing the grants to make sure that they have a list of who the certified communities are. And then, as I mentioned, rolling forward, we're looking for every municipality that has been certified to submit the previous year's information by the end of the first quarter. So as you'll see, you might have caught that earlier in the presentation, I said that, and this is how the program started, is that, and as of today is still the case, is that localities would get a preference. If you're certified as pro-housing, you would be receive a preference in the scoring for this list of grants. However, moving forward, the governor has proposed that for the next round of these particular grants, it will actually be a requirement. So I understand that can be a little bit confusing because we're kind of in a bit of a transition between those two right now. But the idea being that, again, the governor takes the housing shortage extremely seriously and wants to emphasize that this is an important value and an important need for New York State. So we are going to have pro-housing become a requirement in order to be eligible for the programs listed on this slide. So how do I get started? So the easy part, well, maybe not the easy part, is if your community wants to apply, officially wants to apply, it would be someone who has the authority to decide that. And again, every town is, or I say town, every village, town, and city are different. And so we don't have a hard and fast rule about who is applying, other than the fact that at some level they have the authority to do so, right? So it's not a random junior staffer at an agency, although I love junior staffers at agencies. It does need someone who can sign a letter of intent and say, yes, we're serious about this. But there are multiple people within most governments who, would be representative. And then, selecting the application coordinator or contact person, working with the relevant departments to collect the zoning and permit information. And depending on what we've also certainly discovered is that you're going to hear me say 1,500 localities. It's a little bit more, actually. There we have 1,500 separate municipalities in New York State, and I swear everyone has their own version of how they track all this information. There is some overlap, which I'll get to, but I think that's part of the reason we stayed a little bit high level, is that some places all the information might be in one department, some it might be in two, some it might be in four, and so we're happy to help people kind of work through some of that, but that is what we've discovered certainly, is that can be different in each locality. And so that's on the information side. And if your locality needs to pass the resolution, you would work with your governing body to propose it and pass it. And then you will work with myself and Karis to submit the requirements. And so we're using a program called ProQuorum, which is basically like a Dropbox type program, where after you send us the letter of intent, we'll send you a link to a website specific to your locality where you can submit the information. And so you don't have to do it all at one time. You can do it kind of as you complete it. So in terms of, this is just another resource that the governor pulled together. She did not herself pull together the maps, but on her website, on the governor's website, we have a housing stats dashboard. So this is all census data. It does it's pulled from census information, but it is a useful potential starting point for if you're curious about where your locality was in the past 3 years, or past 3 years, in terms of your existing housing growth and permitting and housing stock and tenure type. So it's pretty high level, but it's still it could be definitely a useful starting point. And so for more information, we do have a website for the program, Pro-Housing Communities. And so we will email this deck around afterwards, as well as, again, I think I said this in the last slide, I usually just Google New York State Pro-Housing or New York State stats. Is a little bit faster than remembering the website, but that does have frequently asked questions, and it has all of both the templates and the instructions. And then for specific questions, you can email the team, and that is mostly Karis and I, at prohousing@hcr.ny.gov. And so thank you for everyone for your patience. We've been working through how to manage the influx of questions, and I think we've been definitely getting better over time, and so we definitely appreciate you guys. Again, one of the other many things we've heard is similar to many of the localities we work with. It's like, a half a person on who has the time for this. We have a little bit more time than that, but it is we're working on increasing our resources to make sure that we can respond even faster. Okay. So I'm going to take a quick pause there. Kind of the next stage of the presentation, I'll go through in a little bit more detail about the specific templates and giving some instructions on those. But I want to pause for some early questions. Karis, if you don't mind helping kind of work through, if you have any in the chat? I think at the moment we'll put them in the chat, which is hard for me to see while I am presenting. So Karis is going to help facilitate that. Karis, you're on mute. I don't know if we're here or if we just don't have any questions yet. Let's see if I can figure that out.
So sorry, I was double muted. I haven't seen any in the chat. There we go. We have
Okay.
Kate. The first one is there a cap on the number of pro-housing communities that will get the certification?
No, definitely not. If we could get all 1,500 localities in the state to get it, we would be happy to. We definitely might need more staff other than Karis and I to manage that, but if we could, we would. So there's not a cap. Okay. Great. So again, this is not your only chance to answer questions. Just wanted to start there. So I will, I'll start getting into some of the question or some of the description of the templates themselves, and then that might spark some more questions that we're happy to answer as well. Okay, so the zoning template, what is the overall purpose of it? So it is part of a significantly larger initiative overall for New York State to improve our publicly available GIS mapping layers. So this is a very significant effort involving a lot of people. This is just one small piece of it and will take a few years, but one of the long-term goals is to have throughout the state the ability to visualize certain zoning characteristics. And so this is an example of New York City has to some extent already done this. This is they might even have more information than we need, but this is an example of how another one place, even within New York City, has been able to use mapping to help share that publicly available knowledge more broadly. So in terms of who should fill out the zoning template, we do want to start here. I think that we have gotten one or two pieces of feedback that like, oh my gosh, that looks so confusing. And so I do think the zoning template is not designed for your average, town councilor or or executive. It is designed for someone that at least has some familiarity with the zoning code. And sometimes that's a lawyer, sometimes that's the planning department. Again, similarly, we have different structures. Could be the code department. It depends on how your zoning is maintained. There are a few places in the New York State that don't have zoning codes. And so if you don't have a zoning code, that's a pretty small number. So just contact us directly. But most places do. And if you have one, then that is designed for like a land use professional to help fill it out. And so the idea is that the template it will need to be filled out once, unless you're changing your zoning, all day, every day, but most places are not doing that. So once you fill it out once, then you should be able to, it would be updated that won't be annually updated. And so just for your reference, it's loosely based on the National Zoning Atlas Project, which is a national project. It's actually based out of Cornell in Ithaca. That it's helping states throughout the country to complete similar estimates. And so their efforts. So they're estimating that it could take 1 to 2 hours to 2 to 3 hours. That is based on the complexity of the zoning code. So we've gotten some of them already. We've gotten back that have 5 to 10 different zoning districts. We had one that had 100, which is a lot. I'm hoping that's the max. It's a lot of zoning districts. So if you're more on the higher end, it will probably take you a little bit longer. But we found that most places are kind of definitely on the lower end. So the template is an Excel model. It's designed to collect that information consistently, but also reasonably user-friendly aspect. There's 4 tabs that you'll be seeing. You only fill out the cells that are light yellow. The other cells should update automatically. And so so just to walk through on the first tab, you would select your municipality from the drop-down menu. Oh, and I should also say, as I get rolling into this, it's a PDF of a Word document that also has more detailed instructions on kind of each tab and each cell. So I definitely recommend, I both recommend downloading that as you're going through this, but then also if there's something that's not clear in that, we definitely appreciate feedback because that helps us. We're happy to make edits or change it to make the instructions more user-friendly. But so here, again, you select your municipality name. We are asking that you select that from the list because that does help autofill some of the things that come out later, and then as well as the contact information. And so on that note, once you go to the second tab, then this should be automatically auto-populated from the first tab. And then you're just going to go through the list of all, start with just a list of all your zoning districts. And again, each town has, so there are thematic ideas, but they're slightly different quirks. So this is just an example of names. I think these are from Sleepy Hollow. Generally, most places have a district name, usually an abbreviation. And then this is the only selection you would make actively, excuse me, is the district type, and whether that's primary residential. Some of them are mixed use and some of them might be non-residential if you have a solely commercial or an industrial district. So we are looking for at least just a list of all of the districts in the municipality. Oh, I jumped ahead. So here you are on column D. You will select what the types of zoning districts are. And so, as I said, in the instructions document, there's more detail about how, if you're kind of confused or want more guidance on how to select which type of district goes to which, would match with which category. And again, this is also not like a legally binding document. So if you think it's primarily residential or you think it's mixed, but it's either way, we're not, make your best judgment, I think is probably the best advice. On the third tab, again, so once you filled out that list, the goal, and this is not shown here, but those districts will populate automatically throughout the section. And so the questions will always be, so the tab on the left will always have the questions to go through. You'll answer the same set of questions for each district. But the goal is, hopefully we try to keep them mostly to yes or no, or just some number answers. And so you can scroll down, go through those directly. I will say that, every zoning code is organized slightly differently, at least that I have found. So in some places, the parking requirements might be all in one spot. In some places, they might be divided up between each district. So, it's hard to tell everybody specifically exactly where to look, but we have found certainly that the majority of this information is in there, which is why, though, it's helpful to have someone that's familiar with the zoning code to do this effort. I'd also say, as a non-lawyer, Karis is a lawyer, I love lawyers, but as a non-lawyer, don't be intimidated either. Zoning code reads like it's complicated, but you are looking for specific information. So I have faith in our smart government workers, who I have a lot of respect for. Okay. So on the last tab on this, and this is the reason that we kind of tried to automate the system and combine, again, making it easy to answer the questions, but also the idea is that it'll kind of spit out this summary tab on the back end. And eventually we'll be able to combine all those together and create that map. And so that's kind of the logic before that. So theoretically, the summary tab, you should just be able to take a quick look through and make sure that it matches. Hopefully it should, and then go from there. All right, so I feel like, Karis, I saw a question pop up, but I can't read it, so I'm happy to answer. Can you read it back to me again?
Yeah, sure. We have two. The first is more specific to the zoning template, so I'm going to start with that one. If you list a zoning district as non-residential, do you still need to fill in the detail page for that district?
That's a great question. I would say a few of the questions. So actually, this is a good example of is residential allowed? You can just answer no at the top, but the rest of the questions should not be relevant. I have to look at I'm 90% sure that's true. And if it's not, we'll send an email around afterwards. But pretty much it's the top question.
Thanks. Okay. The next question is about the changes that were proposed in the executive budget. Question is, the fiscal year 25 proposes changes to the pro-housing community program that would make designation a requirement for many funding sources as opposed to just additional points, and also proposes changes to streamline the process to make it easier for communities to participate, especially rural municipalities that may not have a lot of the data that's currently required. Can you speak to the likelihood of these changes occurring next year?
That's a great question. So yes, those are similar to what's been proposed. That is what's been proposed in the budget to make the pro-housing communities a requirement. And then the streamlining is also hopefully to add even more support at HCR other than the two of us. We care a ton, but there's only so many hours in the day. So I think we're certainly hoping to even expand our technical support with some of that funding that's potentially in the budget. So whether that moves forward or not, I'm only hesitating because it's above my head, to be perfectly honest. We certainly think it's a good program. It's a political question. We definitely hope that it moves forward. I don't, in terms of likelihood, we certainly hope so. Because I think that, again, we think the housing crisis is important, but we also want to make sure that we have the resources to support communities like that rural community. Also, yeah, I have given up on predicting how exactly the budget will go, but I agree with you that it's an interesting question. Okay. Moving on to the housing permit template. So for this one, one of the reasons that we included this particular template or this particular question is that as we were doing outreach last year about the housing compact and talking about the housing shortage, we were using a lot of information, and that's the same as on that stats website from the U.S. Census Building Permit Survey. And so this is an official census form that's sent around to localities throughout the entire country. And oh, sorry, I just made a typo. Oh, I said the same thing last time. In order to, but what we heard is that some localities said like, oh, you're calling us out for not having built anything, but that census information is inaccurate, which is definitely, certainly possible. And so what we wanted to make sure is to make sure that people, if they were growing, but even though the census didn't think they were, that we had that those places had locality to correct the record and make sure that we did give them credit for the work that they have been doing. So that is the idea, is that it was starting to be based from that concept, and that so we would again in the longer term that overall New York State would have a more accurate sense of where housing opportunities are increasing throughout the state, just to understand that more clearly. And so for this template, it's designed to be filled out for the team who manages permits for the municipality, which again, sadly, is done differently everywhere. It could be in the building code, could be in the assessor's office, could be in the buildings department, all of the above. What we found is that in our initial feedback, a lot of places do use a centralized database. Municity is one that I've heard of. City manager is another one that we've heard of. We are working. We are certainly hoping to work with some of those existing software companies to make it even easier to submit that information. It's not up and running yet, but just so you know, that's a goal. If you have any ideas about that, we're happy to, or any other softwares that your locality might use that you think could be helpful for this, we think we're certainly open to that. And so similarly, again, as the zoning template is based on the National Zoning Atlas, this is based on information that New Jersey collects annually. Their buildings team collect this, the state collects this, and so that's where a lot of the format came from. So it is an Excel model, again, designed to collect the information consistently throughout. It starts off the same way with the same selecting your municipality on the top, and that will complete it below. Yeah, especially on the housing permit tab, the second tab is about the gross statistics, and this goes back to that census form that I showed earlier. So the information that is here in white, if you select your town or your account, I just use towns for your village or your city, correctly in the first tab, this should automatically fill out with the number of permits and homes that the census thinks that your locality has built over the past 5 years. Now, the reason we filled it out the reason we structured it this way is this is what the census says. But again, particularly for that, for those places that, maybe we actually built an apartment building that had 400 units, but we only submitted it as one unit, which is a very big difference, for example. Here's one with 400. We want to make sure that we submit to the state the correct breakdown so that you get the credit for it. And again, particularly if you want the credit for housing and you actually built those number of homes. So we are allowing in the yellow, you can fill that out from your building, assessor's unit or your code, how many buildings and units were permitted. So you may not need, if it matches, you already, you can just, if you already submit the form religiously every year, then you can fill it out exactly the same. But if it's different, that's okay. And we will take the locality's word for it. And then once you do that, the one here from the census, for this test case, you can see in the last year, they were a little bit below 1%. This is a downstate community. But over the 3-year, they were well above 3% because of that one or two big buildings in the past, in about 3 years ago. So they would get that credit for automatically certifying for pro-housing. And so similarly, if you fill out these sections here in yellow, this will also automatically pop red or green depending on if you've met those goals. So that's kind of a helpful check for you. So one of the things that we have gotten feedback on, and we're working on clarifying the instructions, but I think for the next 2 pages, we are looking for as much information as you have. But partly because again, we're working with so many different types of localities. Some of it, if it seems repetitive, that might be because different people call effectively the same thing by different names. And so we were trying to, make sure we captured all of that. But so in our ideal world, we would love every bit of information that you have. But we've also found that, if you just looking at it, so say if there's affordable units included, if there's none, obviously that's fine. If you don't have the actual address, the address is changing, that's okay too. The address is more important, but that's the type of thing where we want as much information as possible. But if you're missing something that because your system doesn't track it, that's okay. It would be helpful for us to be clarified for that. Okay, and so similarly on the building permits, so this looks like a lot of information, but we definitely understand that each permit and each line wouldn't necessarily include all this information. So again, this is based on New Jersey's system. Ideally, we would love everything on the list, but if your new construction permit doesn't automatically include, how much retail square footage is in, that's less important. For us, the most important thing is this bottom line, which is that permits that increase or decrease the net housing units. And so that is, if you just run a straight, like how many permits did we release last year? Somebody redoing their kitchen, like my neighbor next door, is not, you don't need to pull that. We're very happy she gets to do her kitchen, but that's not necessary. Again, we're trying to track housing permits. And so the increase, housing, this includes, however, if some towns do allow for ADUs. And so like if you're adding an ADU, that would increase housing units. That definitely counts as a new home. But if somebody is demolishing a 2-family home, for example, and building a new 1-family home, that would be a decrease. And so we would want to know that, to be able to track that. And so hopefully that makes it a little bit easier to track the information that we're looking for. And similarly to the last one, the tabs will roll up to the summary tab, and that's going to help us on our back end to be able to create some more robust tracking, particularly and to be able to look for patterns throughout the state. And so where people have best practices and are growing like gangbusters versus places that want to help, that are want to be growing but haven't quite grown yet, we can start to compare what types of practices work better in different types of places. And so again, circling back to this is where you can get our information, and we will sit on, I think that's it. Yep. We will, I'll leave this up while we're talking through the rest of the questions. All right, Karis, let's go.
You are doing a really good job of answering questions as they come up, and the attendees are doing a good job of anticipating what you're going to say next. So excellent. I think the last 2 you've actually answered.
Okay.
And if folks have more, go ahead and put them in, please.
And I should say too, as folks are thinking of their questions, we've been doing, we're happy to do like a, half an hour consult. Makes it sound very fancy, but if you have specific questions that, you want to think about a little bit more, or you want to spend some time, or it's pretty specific to your locality, because definitely some places do. We're happy to put on half an hour and walk you through it. We've been doing that a little bit more the past couple of weeks, and I think it's been super helpful. I hope so. And so you can set those up by emailing that same address. It goes to Karis and I, and we'll work on coordinating, finding a time for a little bit more detail if that's helpful. Great. Are you willing to preview the spreadsheets? Absolutely, sure. Yeah, if you have questions or if you want us to take a quick look, we're happy to. Just drop us an email. Yeah, just drop us an email and we'll take a look or answer questions directly. All right, if we don't have too many more questions, again, always feel free to reach out to us. And thank you for your grace. It takes a day or two to get back to you, but I promise we're reading them and getting back to you on all the questions. And we really appreciate your interest. And as I should say too, if you've happened to already applied or you're interested in applying, I do truly mean, this is the first time I've created a program from scratch. And so we definitely see it as a learning process for us too. We want to make it, we do want to make it more straightforward and for people to apply and use the program. So if you have specific things that you're bumping up against, feel free to just let us know that as well. Or concerns that, maybe you're a staffer and you do want to apply, but there's somebody in your town who doesn't want you to. That kind of information is helpful for us just to understand, is it a misunderstanding by an elected official or is it something else? Because we've seen both of those, in fact. People had concerns that we were able to alleviate and sometimes we're not. So, but that is information that's helpful for us and how we explain the program to other people. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for attending on this Friday afternoon. I hope everybody has a lovely weekend. And we will, again, we'll email this around. This is on our website, on the website that's there, this deck. And we'll be available to answer questions if you need it. Thanks so much.